What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's design is this lovely sunset scene where we've got a waterfall making its way out of our design and trailing off at the bottom here. If you're new here, I post Procreate tutorials every week. So if you'd like a Procreate tutorial to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell to get notified about all my new videos. Shout out to my Patreons, I'll throw their names on the screen now. If you're after more Joel Create content, as well as 2 exclusive tutorials every month, as well as access to our exclusive Patreon only Facebook group, I'll leave a link in the description down below and you can show your support over there. As always, there's a link in the description so you can follow along with the exact same palette, so check the description out down below. And with that said, let's get started. So as always, let's create a new canvas. So we're going to hit the plus icon in top right and we're going to create a custom canvas, and our custom sizes are 2500 by 2500. And once we're through to the canvas, we can go ahead and take a look at our colors. So we're going to use this color here for the background. So let's go to our layers and let's select the background color, and let's use this one here, bottom left hand corner, which is our dark purple. Then what we need to do is progress on to creating the initial circle. So let's go to the calligraphy section and let's scroll up until we see the monoline option. And then we can continue to use white. So let's then go onto our canvas. Let's make our brush size slightly larger so you can see. And all we're going to draw is a circle in the center of the screen. Now for this, we're just going to draw a circle, hold your pen at the end to get a perfect ellipse, and then pop your finger on the screen to get a perfect circle. Now something roughly around about that size is good. We can drag and drop our color in because it's a perfect shape. And then let's go to our cursor, and with the snapping option turned on, we can drag our circle into the center of the canvas until we see both the orange horizontal and vertical lines, as always, to let us know that our circle is smack bang in the middle. And now let's create a new layer. So let's go to our layers and tap on the plus, and then let's make it a clipping mask. So let's tap on that layer and turn on clipping mask. And then we're going to continue with the monoline brush. Again, don't worry about what size. The only thing you'll need to do is draw a straight line across the screen. So roughly about 2/3 down. We're just going to draw a straight line across the screen like so, and hold your pen at the end to get a perfectly nice straight line. And then put your finger on the screen to get a perfectly horizontal line. And now at our end point, let's go all the way around and then meet up to our start point. And you can drag and drop the color in like so. And then the only thing I'm going to do is just drag mine slightly further down. So let's roughly move it to roughly there. That's good. So let's start on the background hills. So we're going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer underneath our water. So let's go down a layer and hit plus. Let's go to our palette and let's select this first purple top left on the first row. And I'm going to reduce my brush size slightly down to around about 30%. And I'm just going to create some nice wavy hills. Maybe they drop down ever so slightly here on the right hand side. Something like that is ideal. And as always, we need to link up our shape. So let's start at our end point, go all the way around to our start point, and then let's drag and drop the color in like so. And that's the first little hilly area done. Let's go to our layers and let's repeat the process again. So let's go to our base circle, create a new layer. Let's then go to our colors and select then the second color on the top row. And now really I want to do the opposite kind of to this layer. So I want to start on the right hand side and just create some sort of bouncy hills that maybe duck in behind ever so slightly. So that's my line here that I've used for that one. And I'm going to start at my end point, go all the way around to my start point, and then drag and drop the color in like so. Now any stage here you can make an adjustment. You could grab the uniform and just drag it into position. You could even flip it horizontally if you weren't quite happy with it, but I'm happy with the layout of that one. Now let's go back to our base layer, create a new layer. Let's go to our colors and select then the third option. And for this one, we're going to create more of a sort of sharper, pointier hillside. And essentially we're going from nice and soft up towards like essentially mountains. So for this one, I'm going to just add some more bumps and lumps in here. Maybe they drop down quite close in the middle and they just sort of bounce up towards the right hand side, go all the way around and link up to our start point, and drag and drop the color in. And then let's repeat the process. Let's go back down to our base layer. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our colors and select then the fourth color now. And for this one, we're going to really start to punch out the hills a bit more. So I'm going to come in from quite high on the right hand side, or the left hand side even, and making my way all the way across until I make my way to the right and then go all the way around and link up to my start point. So if I drag and drop my colour in here, you can really see I've now started to really elevate those hills and make them slightly higher, more pointy as well. And then for the final layer, we're going to repeat the process one more time. Let's go back to our base layer. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our colours and select the 5th colour. And then on this one, again, you want to go even more pointy, but maybe just dip in the centre so that we can give a nice allocated space to our nice little area for our sun. So let's go make these nice and jaggedy. Let's create this sort of dip in the middle there, and then bounce upwards like so, and go all the way around, and then meet up to our start point, and then drag and drop the colour in. Now at this point you could just pause and maybe go in and add some extra texture to some of these that maybe were slightly rounder. You know, add some nice little bumps and lumps in there just to make them more random, a little bit sharper as well, maybe not so rounded. And then also just position it where you want it. So maybe I'll just drag mine slightly closer into the middle where I've created this sort of little dip, and then that's where our sun can also nicely sit. And that's what we'll do next. We'll go to our layers. We're going to go to our base layer here, and we're going to, on that layer, just tap on it and turn on the option of alpha lock. And with that, we're then going to go to our colors, and we can pick a couple of different colors for our background. Now, we'll start with these two over here, and maybe we'll incorporate some of the reds and maybe even the purples as well. So let's start with this color here, and then let's grab our color and drag and drop it into the circle. And then we're going to go to our brush library. We're going to go to the airbrushing section, and we're going to use the soft brush at the top. And let's go back to our colors, and then let's use the second color out of these two on the right hand side. I'm going to rotate my canvas so it's nice and easy for me to go from left to right, and I'm going to reduce my brush size. Let's go to actually about 20%, and then from left to right at the top, making my way down, I'm just creating a nice little gradient there between that color and the original color that we had, leaving a little bit of it in behind here, in behind the mountain, so you can get a nice glow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out a color from this selection over here. Let's go for this red here, so the 5th color on the top row, and then just stroke the very top edge of the sky like so, just to add in a little bit more color. And then I'm just going to go back to my colors one more time, and let's select a darker purple. Let's select this one here, and the first one on the top row, and then swiping from left to right, just paint in the very top edge of our sky. And then we should get a nice gradient. Now, if you're not happy with your gradient, as always, you can simply go to your adjustments. You can go to Gaussian Blur and Layer. And if you swipe from left to right, you'll see a little progress bar across the top, and that's how much blur you're applying onto the screen. And I'm going to roughly go for something around about, I'm going to go for 15%. It's up to you roughly if you want to do this step, but it just helps just to nicely blend your colors together as well. And while we're working on the sky area, let's go to our layers, and we want to create a white circle for the sun. So let's create a new layer. Let's then go to our colors and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. Let's go to our brush library, and then under calligraphy again, we'll return back to the monoline brush, and let's draw a circle on the screen, and then hold your pen at the end to get a perfect ellipse. But let's pop our finger on the screen one more time to create a perfect circle, and then just drag and drop our white into the circle. And as always, grab the cursor and position it nicely in the center of the design. Now, you definitely want to get this orange vertical line through it, but roughly where's the center? Let's just see. You could potentially leave it there. That is smack bang in the center of the design. You could even make the sun slightly bigger and then leave it on the vertical line and horizontal line somewhat like that. And I think for this design, we actually will. And what you could do is you could move all your mountains ever so slightly further down, just to give a nice space for it. But what it's doing is it's now sitting nicely in the center of the circle, so that when we now create our radiating circles upwards for the glow, they'll all nicely sort of incorporate to this circle, so they won't look slightly skewed compared to the original circle that we created for the background. So what I could do, as I mentioned, is I could go into my layers, and I could just reduce the height of this one, maybe bring it down ever so slightly, or anything that in your layers are slightly too high, you could bring them down just to create some more space in behind for our sun. Let's just grab that layer one more time, just give it a little bit more space for the sun in behind. And then let's go back to our layers for the sun. So let's swipe that to the left hand side and we get the option of duplicate. So we're going to duplicate that layer. And then on the second one out of the two, we just want to drop the opacity down to roughly around about 10% is a good start. And then once you've done that, you want to go to your cursor and make sure uniform is turned on. That makes sure that the circle will expand perfectly as a circle as you stretch it out. And then what we want to do is just scale that up and then position it again smack bang in the middle. So we want the vertical orange line and we also want the horizontal orange line, which lets us know it's also perfectly in the center of the design. And now we're going to repeat that process twice more. So we're going to swipe on our layer that we're on now, and then the bottom one out of the two. Let's go to the cursor again and let's scale that up. And roughly you want to try and get to the point where you've essentially made the gap between these two the same as this one here. So now let's just try and position that where we need it first. And roughly that's actually bang on. And then we're going to repeat that process one more time. Let's go to our layers, swipe that to the left hand side and hit duplicate. And the second one out of the two, let's go back to our cursor, increase the size of that. Again, position it where we need it, and then we can make an assumption, does it need to be slightly bigger? Now mine needs to be a smidge bigger, so let's just increase that. Position that in the center. And now we could essentially keep going all the way to the very edge. I think what I will do is I will actually create one more. So I'm going to duplicate that layer one more time. I'm going to go to the bottom one out the two. I'm going to go to my cursor. I'm going to increase the size one more time. And the reason I've done that now is because we were starting to get a lot closer towards the edge of the design in terms of the original base circle, that it made sense just to do it one more time, because then this gap here would almost match the gaps that we created down here, and now nicely all fit in with that circular style. And now what we can do is we can start to move on towards the bottom half of the design, so we can start to add in the shapes for the sort of rocks and then the water reflection as well. So let's go to our layers. Now this layer needs to be towards the top because it's got to sit above this sort of base water layer that we created. So let's create a new layer. Let's make sure it's a clipping mask as well, so everything's nice and tidy. Then let's go to our colors. And we want to use the background color here so everything nicely blends into one another. So we're going to go to the background color, which is down here in the bottom left hand corner. And then starting from the right hand side, roughly towards the center, we're just going to create some sort of like cliff shape. So we're still using the monoline brush that we created before. And then something roughly around about that is good. And then go all the way around to where you started and drag and drop the color in, just like we did above. And this is roughly where our water is then going to flow through the gap in the middle. Don't worry about this edge too much, because in a second with the water, we're actually going to layer the water layer on top so that this edge here will be hidden. And then we'll repeat the process for then the other side as well. So we're going to start roughly around about the same gap, so roughly here. Let's create some more sort of maybe flatter shapes over here, and then a different drop. And as always, go all the way around and link up to where you started, and then drag and drop the color in. Now, just as a little tip, if you're not happy with something that's also on the same layer as something else, you can always go to your selection. You can always go to freehand. You can draw around the object that you want to move, and then you can grab the cursor icon and then drag that away into an area that you're happy with it. So I want to give a little bit more space in the center here, so I'm going to just drag that out there. And then I'm going to repeat the process for this area over here as well. And I'm going to grab my cursor and just drag that up and out of the way a little bit more, roughly something like that. And then we are going to go to our layers. Let's create a new layer underneath this one that we just created. Let's create a new layer. Then let's switch the color out to this option here on the top row. So the third one in from the left hand side. And on this layer, and this one's going to be a little bit of a smaller area, but it's just going to sit just in behind here, where we've got another sort of edge here making its way down into the water, and drag and drop the color in as always to create that nice full shape, and then repeat that on the other side as well. So you can come up a little bit higher and then just repeat that, creating a perfectly outlined shape, and then drag and drop your color in. And now we've got our sort of edges, we can add some details. So let's go to our brush library. Under calligraphy, let's continue to scroll down towards the script option. And my brush size, I'm going to make it roughly around about, let's go about 7%. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to draw a very small little tree. So I'm just going to draw the trunk of the tree and use the pressure of the brush to create some nice little bumps and lumps in the trunk of the tree. And then with that, you can increase your brush size to say 15% or around that, and just pop your pen on the screen and sort of press up and down like with different pressure, and you kind of create this nice little big blobby sort of look to the tree, and that's what we want to roughly aim for. And something around about that is pretty good with me. Just add some little extra smaller pieces on the outside, but something roughly like that is what we want to try and achieve on this side, as well as then the other side as well. So let's go over here and let's create another tree. So just create a little flick. So I create sort of two leaning in lines to one another. You could also create a little extra branch off as well. And then with my brush, just press them up and down first of all, just to create some sort of shape. You can then fill it in, and you could even leave it something a little bit skinnier on this side compared to the other side. And now we've got a nice tree in there. And then let's repeat that process then for this darker purple area as well. So first of all, let's change our color to the darker color here in the bottom left-hand corner. Let's go to our layers and make sure we draw on the correct layer. So we want to draw on the darker option, turn it on and off just to be sure. And then these trees need to be a little bit bigger. So you will want to create more of a larger tree trunk here. Fill it in. And then create some sort of branches off. So maybe we create 2 branches off this one. Something roughly around about that. Now, it doesn't look like much right now, but then when you start to increase your brush size, let's go to 25% and start to sort of fill in the top area of the tree. This will start to really come together. And you're kind of just going backwards and forwards, creating like a bumpy, lumpy sort of shape, and then filling in any obvious gaps until you get something, you know, roughly the same as we did with the other two. Like something like that is good. That's good with me. Maybe even just flush this sort of trunk out a little bit more because mine was looking a bit skew. And then repeat the process on this side as well. So maybe this one's a tad taller, but maybe skinnier. And then let's also create some branches off as well, like so. Maybe just one big branch. And then with the bumps and lumps style with the pressure of the pen, we're just blobbing in some color and then just making it work, really. Just making it work with what we draw on the screen. And maybe just we could go back in and erase parts of it if we're not too happy with it, if it's too rounded. But otherwise, I'm just going backwards and forwards until I create a sort of big bushy sort of top to the tree. Like so. And then what you could do is you could always zoom in as well. We could create some nice little rocks in here, or maybe some like smaller bushes or even flicks of grass as well, just to show that there's some extra vegetation in there. And maybe another little rock here. And I'm going to do the same just over here very quickly. Just create some, maybe like a little bush with some sort of very small flicks of grass underneath. Something like that is good with me. And now what we need to move on to is then the water effect. So this one is going to be a layer that sits on top of everything else. So we have to try and make it work within the design that we've created. So what I mean by that is, let's go to our layers. Let's create a new layer at the very top. So let's go to our brush library and let's go to calligraphy and use the monoline brush. Now the first thing we want to do is just zoom in ever so slightly. And what we want to do is draw a horizontal line that kind of matches up to this orange line here. And that's going to be sort of our starting point, and roughly not the full width of the sun, but kind of close. So if I zoom in, let me just draw out what I'm talking about. Just get a perfectly straight line, hold your pen at the end, and obviously pop your finger on the screen to get a nice horizontal one. And I'm going to let go there and then zoom out. You can roughly see it sits somewhat directly in the middle of the sun, and it's just where our shimmer's points are going to start. So we're going to start at either end and then draw out our nice little zigzags. Now the only reason I've done this is because this is not a clipping layer. We can't clip it to any layer here that would make sense for the design. So we're just trying to sort of draw out our foundation line here, and then we can draw the rest. So what we then want to do is let's reduce our monoline brush all the way down to 1%. And then starting on the left hand side, we're just going to create sort of little zigzags backwards and forwards. Now these ones need to be nice and tight together up here. But then as we get slightly closer towards the bottom of the design, they can be slightly larger, and you want to end up to a point where you end up roughly here on the edge of this little piece that we designed over here. So that's our little zigzag effect there, and we're going to repeat that process then on the right hand side as well. So if I rotate my canvas to make it life a bit easier, I can then go backwards and forwards, just creating little random little zigzags, trying to go like relatively horizontal until we roughly hit the same point that the other side does as well, so that our water then tails off at exactly the same angle. And now we've got those 2 points in, we can simply go to the point that we ended on last and draw a straight line down, and hold your pen so you get a nice straight line, and then just angle it slightly inwards so that the bottom slightly angles inwards. Something roughly around about that is good. And then let's do the same on this side. Let's draw a straight line down, and all you want to do is try and make sure your lines are slightly symmetrical to one another. Roughly around about that mark is good. And now at this point you should be able to just drag and drop your colour in, and then that is our shimmer and our waterfall tail off. Now the only thing we want to do here is just create more of a shape here to our waterfall. So we just want to sort of create more of a bulge on the top edge here, like so, just where the water rounds its way off of the edge of the sort of cliffside here. And I'm also just creating a nice little fill in that area there. And now on this side, I'm just creating a little bulge towards the top. So roughly something like that. And then you can just quickly fill in that little bit. So now what we should do is let's go to our layers. Let's drag in the correct colors. Now we're going to use these 3 colors here on the second row. The foundation color we need to pop in there is this sort of peach color. So let's tap on that first color on the second row. Let's drag and drop the color into that shape. And now that nicely fits the tones of this design. And then what we want to then do is start to airbrush in some different colors. So let's go to the brush library first and select under airbrushing the soft brush. Then let's go to our colors, and let's first of all start off with the lighter color, so this yellow. So second row, third one in. And then let's check our brush size. So let's make sure it's roughly around about 25%. Let's reduce that down, actually it's a bit big. Let's go down to 15. And then we want to also make sure in our layers that we tap on that layer for our water effect, and also turn on the option of alpha lock. And now let's just paint from left to right with the brighter color towards the top, creating a nice little fade out so it turns into the original peach color. And then let's also switch our color out to the sort of second color on the second row, the sort of more reddy peach color, and then start that at the bottom of the waterfall and make its way up. And then we've got a nice lovely gradient between the two. We could then also add in where we want some more highlights to be, where this sort of rounds off at the top here. And now what we'll do is we'll go to our layers. Let's create a new layer, and let's tap on that layer and make sure it's a clipping mask. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to add in some extra colors, and then we can smudge them out as well, just get some nice water effect in here. I'm going to start with the second row, third option, and that's that slightly lighter color. And I'm going to start at the bottom by drawing a sort of perfect sort of horizontal shape with the airbrush, until we get a nice little area of sort of that color down there. Now I'm going to go to my smudge tool here, and I'm going to use the watercolor option under painting, just right at the bottom. And then what you want to do is, my brush size is set to, let's go to 15% as well. You want to just drag upwards in a nice straight line from left to right every time, making your way further across, and then you end up creating these lovely little streaks up the waterfall for where the water's starting to tail off towards the bottom. And now the final touch I want to make is just add a little bit of a gradient in the water underneath. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'm going to find my water layer, which is this one here. So I'm going to turn it on and off, and I'm going to tap on that layer and make sure it's alpha locked so we can only paint within the boundaries of it. And then I'm going to go to my colors, and I just want to grab a little bit of a darker purple just to add a little bit of a gradient in there. So let's go for this one here, so the second one on the first row. And using the airbrush and the soft brush, I'm just going to stroke just towards the top edge. Let's make our brush size bigger actually. Let's go to 20%. Let's reduce that actually. Let's go down to 16%, and then stroking from left to right, just fade that in like so, just where this hill maybe is casting a little bit of a shadow onto the water. And then what we also need to do is then reflect that in the water as well, because the hills would be blocking the sun. So let's go to our layers again. Let's scroll back up towards the top until we find the waterfall sort of ripple effect that we've got here. Let's create a new layer above that. And then let's just also fade that top edge from left to right, just where that hill would be, possibly creating that sort of darker shadowed area on top of our water. And if I pop my pen at the top, let's go for 4 fingers to go full screen, and then we get our beautiful finished design for today's tutorial. So if you like this tutorial, please drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot and sends my videos out to more people. If you're new here, I post Procreate tutorials every week, so hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell to get notified about all my new videos. And as always, a huge shout out to my Patreons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now. If you're after exclusive content, such as 2 exclusive tutorials a month, as well as access to our Patreon only Facebook group, hit the link in the description and show your support over there. Please also be sure to share your designs with me on Instagram. I love seeing your creations and sharing them to my story. Make sure to tag me in them so I don't miss them in my thread. And that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.